Hey everybody, welcome back to the wonderful world of Remnant Radio. One of our slogans here is helping you break outside of your theological echo chambers, and I'm here with Matt Whitman, and we're going to be talking about that very subject. It's going to be an exciting program. You guys stay tuned. Guys, we're back. Lots of really cool stuff happening at Remnant Radio. This week, if you are watching this video live or when it premieres, I suppose, we are at the Remnant Conference there in Houston, Texas. We're going to be down there, I think, packed out, man. We're pretty darn close. The sanctuary seats 1,100. I think we're at 9 something on registration right now, so we're pretty close. But if you're in the Houston area and you want to stop by, conference starts Thursday night. Come hang out with us. But for the rest of you guys, y'all are in for a treat today. We're going to be hanging out, talking with Matt. He's got a great YouTube channel, great podcast that I've gleaned a lot from, learned a lot from. But before we dive into all that stuff, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. Link in the description. You get all the updates on conferences, courses, and all the fun stuff we got going on here at Remnant. Without further ado, Matt, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your ministry for people who might not be super familiar with you?
Yeah, sure. My name is Matt Whitman. I've been doing internet stuff for a long time, 10 or 11 years now on YouTube, and I've done a daily Bible podcast since 2019 called the 10-Minute Bible Hour. On the YouTube side, dude, you've been in YouTube as long as I have. It kind of evolves with you in terms of what you're thinking about and what you're curious about. So I've done a bunch of just Bible stuff that's meant to be understandable to a wide range of people, but I kind of like the life of the mind, church history, theology side of all of that. So I try to make content that gets people into that world without them totally knowing that's what's happening. And then I also have made a bunch of videos where I go to other people's churches that are different from mine and have them explain what they do and why they do it and why we're different and why their stuff looks the way it looks and tell me why they love it. And the idea there is to build towards something that I like to call convictional unity. I guess you and I have talked about that before here. The idea being not a soft ecumenicism where we pretend we don't think things in order to get along, but where we deeply understand why we think what we think and then defiantly choose to get along anyway, even in the face of well understood and articulated disagreement. So I do that. And then the daily Bible podcast is a thing where 5 days a week, I do a short Bible podcast where we pick a book of the Bible. We take as many episodes as we need to go through it. It took me 800 days, 800 episodes to get through Matthew, but we had a lot of fun. Then we've done some of the Persian exile books, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. We've done Galatians. We're just about done with that. We're just about to start Philemon here in a couple of weeks. So it's a great place for people to jump in if that sounds like it would be fun.
Yeah, man, I love your work. I love your posture and the way that you do stuff. And you mentioned visiting churches. That's some of my favorite content to watch as a guy who loves church history, loves various traditions. Our whole podcast is interviewing scholars from different churches and denominations, but to go inside the church and to learn about the liturgy and how it forms and fashions their worship, the architecture, what it means, even the small things about like the way that you take communion. I remember going to an Anglican church going, what meaneth all of this? Because you're holding your hands out to take if you've baptized. If you haven't been baptized, you cross your hands and they pray for you. Right. Like all the different rules and systems of why they do what they do. At first, it looked like a lot of rot tradition to me. Like this is just going through the motions. But the longer I was in that space, I saw how it was a way to form and fashion honor and order and. I found a lot of beauty in Christ going to that Anglican church for a long time. And we've incorporated quite a bit of the liturgy, just prayers of confession, prayers of thanksgiving into our liturgy at church. And it's been super helpful and healthy for us. So I very much thank you for content today. Hey, so I asked at the top of the show, because we were just, doing a little bit of chatting right before we started recording here. And I told you, hey, we're talking about theological echo chambers. And you're like, man, this is something I'm passionate about. It's cooking your grits, as someone would say in the South. My words, not yours. Tell me where the heat's coming from. Why is this a passionate subject for you?
Oh, mercy. I'm not thrilled with where the conversation is at right now in terms of the internet and Christianity and theology. I had really hoped it would look different when this pivot, this turning occurred. And we are in the middle of a turning. I'm not talking about the old red, blue, left, right, Democrat, Republican spectrum when I say the following thing. I'm talking about a historic orientation between the people of God and people who don't like it and try to destroy it. Sometimes that happens to line up with certain political ideologies, other times not. But for the past 20 years, um, we've kind of tried a harder version, something that goes beyond liberalism. We've tried a hard leftism. It has been found wanting, as it has always been found wanting. And as is always the case, there's this reawakening to God and ancient things that happens when there's an attempt to just sort of scrub this from the public consciousness and move on. We knew this would come. I mean, the people who were, singing the death knell of Christianity, like, come on, people have been trying to get rid of belief in the one true God for as long as people have believed in the one true God. It doesn't work. The gates of hell are not going to prevail against it. The gospel is the most powerful message in the history of the world. There's going to be a turning, and that turning has occurred. There was an initial shock in the age of social media. Nobody really knew how to do this or talk about it. And we all kind of bickered amongst ourselves for a while because we had never really hung out, that being the different Christian traditions. So we kind of fought and we were shocked, and some of us fell away from faith in confusion. Some of us were just embarrassed because our ideas looked kind of antiquated in the new world of social media for a while. But it rounded the corner, and we knew it was going to round the corner. And I was kind of hoping that we would all be in this place of tremendous unity and this sense of, okay, there's a whole bunch of people who've been really hurt by what we just went through. There's a whole bunch of us who've been dinged up by what we just went through. Now would be a really good time to show Christian charity to each other and serve the world, and with open arms have the gospel ready. And so many people are doing that well. But the style and tone and tenor of the conversation in places like Twitter and Reddit is frustrating me. It's just not a great time to be cannibalizing each other. It would be a great time to be lending a hand to people who are in need and making sure that the gospel makes sense. And so, yeah, I've been a little bit frustrated with how gullible we've been in response to the breezes and nudges of the algorithm. And I think it would be a great moment for Christians who live on the internet to inhale, exhale, and think carefully about what exactly it is we're trying to accomplish here, and maybe chart a slightly different course in how we handle our business there on the internet. How's that?
Hmm. No, I think it's good. I think it's good. Walk me through, like, what do you think is driving it? Do you think we are disciples of our own culture, and that kind of tribalism of, hey, you don't look like me, you don't sound like me, I'm gonna fight you, or do you think it's part of their more religious upbringing that this theological philosophical view is superior, therefore I'm going to treat you inferior in some significant sense? I think there's probably a lot of that involved, and
Yeah.
maybe it's a couple of things that you're saying. It doesn't have to be either of those, but what do you think is driving the tension?
Okay. A handful of things. Number one, there's an intersection between youth and confidence that is great for certain types of action, but can be dangerous when it comes to these kind of conversations. There's when you're sure that something is true, even if you've only recently discovered it, but you don't know the material well enough to quite say why yet, there's sort of a loud insecurity, combative insecurity that can happen to any of us, to all of us. And in the real world, you tend to, I mean, they used to call this the cage stage, right? Like cage
Yes, I was
stage
about to say it.
Calvinists, cage stage
Yep.
Lutherans, cage stage Orthodox. And this old term is, it's an acknowledgement that there's sort of a, we need to put you in the icebox for a little bit when you first discover the thing. We love that you're very excited about it, but there's certain personality types that go real loud with it without realizing that all these things that are just occurring to you, Christians have been fully aware of for 2,000 years. It's already been gamed out. We've thought about it. You're invited to the conversation, but coming in all hot without all the information is a lot of sideways energy, and it's not particularly helpful. We've all been there. We've all been there. It's very easy to be excited about something that you're just figuring out is very real and true, and also not aware of what you don't know yet. During that time, it would be a good idea to listen, learn, and read a lot. However, In the age of social media, what you do when you have an idea or a thought is you pick up your keyboard and you just type things, whatever it is, and you put it out there, and things that are more brash or off-putting are going to get a whole lot of clicks. Now, there's no one particular expression of Christianity that has the market cornered on this. I'm running into people who think this way in Presbyterian circles, Orthodox circles. Oh, by Presbyterian, I just mean Calvinist in general. Catholic circles, people who were evangelicals but are now Catholics, people who were Catholics but got fed up with that and are now evangelicals. Overwhelmingly, it seems to be those who have recently discovered a thing and rejected an old thing, whose material just, I mean, it's inflammatory. And so it gets the dreaded double amplification. People who love to hear it are like, yeah, somebody just discovered why my thing is great. And now they're nuking everything else. This is wonderful. We have a new ally. But then it also gets the amplification of, I don't like that tweet. That makes me angry. That's not a fair characterization of my thing. The algorithm recognizes both of those types of engagement and disproportionately amplifies that, meaning that the cage stage is going to be one of the most amplified things in this era, in this iteration of the evolution of social media. And it's, I mean, this is why we have the biblical principle of don't lay the hands of blessing and authority on somebody too quickly, because stuff can get real weird. We also have the biblical principle of don't adjudicate your disputes. Don't sue other believers. Sort that out of court. Adjudicating all of our disputes in front of everyone with no regard for how that comes off to somebody on the front end, it's not shrewd. It's just not the best play. So I've been pretty disappointed in that trend in the conversation of late. That said, there's a bunch of things that are going great. It's just, I'm more worked up about the things that aren't.
Yeah. Well, where do you go to the places where you're looking for the good stuff? I mean, frankly, some of the stuff I listen to is not super Protestant. I'm mega Protestant. I bleed Protestant, right? But nevertheless,
Okay.
I love watching the Pints with Aquinas. That's a blast, man. Just sitting there listening to conversations with him talking to other Catholics or Protestants or Eastern Orthodox folks.
Mm-hmm.
It's super ecumenical. It's super kind. I like listening to guys like Gavin Ortland, very level-handed, very, just faithful and careful with how he speaks, I think. And now again, all of these guys are going to be guys I disagree with on something, but I look at the broad spectrum of YouTubers out there, and certainly there are some of the rage baiters, if you will, that certainly exist. But there's good spaces to begin to, and I think it really comes down to humble yourself, I think, in some sense, because a lot of this is you don't know what you don't know. I started this podcast back in 2017, and I have talked to some people recently who said the most interesting thing about the podcast early on was tuning in to figure out how you were going to land on something, because you were so undecided on so many things, and you were just bringing on people to talk about it and hey dude, convince me of your thing. I want to be convinced. And anyway, and I realized I was raised in a Pentecostal tradition, and in my local church, I was a big theological fish in a very small pond, if that makes sense. And the second I started this podcast, I realized very, very quickly how small of a minnow I was in the larger grand scheme of Christianity. And I realized, dude, I don't know.
I'm laughing not because I think that about you. I'm laughing because,
oh, sure.
Yes, I'm hearing what you're saying.
I hear that. Yeah. It was just super humbling. And I found that I picked up the Book of Concord from the Lutheran Church and just consumed it. And you get the Book of Common Prayer from the Anglicans, just consumed content from, all over the spectrum. I'm reading about a book a week for, these podcasts, interviewing people. And, the more I'm in this, the more I realize I don't know. And I wonder if that's kind of the greatest danger of some of these echo chambers, is that it creates an insular sense of pride, because I'm right, I just figured it out. But then all of these, to your point, the algorithm lifts these views, And viewership is really how you determine whether something is right or good today. In the public eye,
Click
okay,
epistemology. Yes.
dude, that's so good. Click epistemology. Yeah, but like, hey, this guy's got 200,000 subscribers and his videos have 20,000 views each. He's got to have some good things to say, and people jump on there. And the reason he has that is outrage. So,
Yes.
I mean, I wonder if you could kind of just speak into like the pride and the humility space of these echo chambers, maybe your own journey in some of this. I don't know, but I think that there needs to be something that takes place in the life of a believer who realizes we're talking about them. They're watching this episode. Why are you clapping? I'm talking about you. Famous Paul Washer clip. But yeah, way into the that pride and humility piece, and how we can even detect it in our own heart.
Well, first of all, my standard is higher for you if you don't put your name or your face on what you do. If your name is Presbyterian Star Fox, I don't care about your dumb opinions, and I'm tired of it. Put your name and your face on it. Not, but it's. I think your opinion matters less. You go through and read the epistles, every single one of them. I mean, think about the end of Galatians. Paul grabs the pen and he's like, look at what large letters I'm writing with. This is my own hand. This is how I write. Paul says in another letter, you know, this is my distinctive style. It's me. Everything in here I own. I said that. This kind of cutesy trend of not owning what you say, not risking your name and your reputation, but you still want to wade into the conversation and be a participant in it. I think such people should just be roundly ignored. Put your name on the thing. It fundamentally changes what you're able to say or not say. Now, I know a lot of people who have those kind of gimmicky accounts and whatnot. They'll say, no, my name's Bob or whatever. Okay, but I mean, that's cool, fine. I don't scrub through all of these things, but I do think that theology that happens publicly, where you own it and kind of your reputation is on the line, that dates back to the earliest days of the entire tradition. That's what we do. We own it. And who's saying it matters. And saying it invisibly should relegate such things to just, I mean, nothing risked, nothing gained. So, so yeah, if you're wondering if I'm talking about you, if you don't put your name behind anything that you say or do, yeah, I kind of am. I think that's in violation of the spirit of what the conversation is. You jump in and own it. Don't be wrong in front of people. It's okay to be wrong in front of people. It's okay to not know things in front of people. It's okay to not have an opinion or even the correct opinion about every single thing as it comes down the pike. But the expectations that are being built for this conversation space, I don't think are great. That said, I think about where I was at when I was, in my 20s, big theological fish in a small pond. I really like that turn of a phrase. I went to Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, kind of on accident. I just needed a change, and that was somewhere I could go. I had gone to the undergrad side, so it was a pretty easy transition. And I assumed it would be like everything else involving Christianity that I'd experienced so far. Easy. And I can just skate by sounding smart or just saying things that'll preach when stuff gets difficult, and that'll cover over any lack of knowledge or cover up any insecurity I would feel. And my first day, my first class, that is probably the most humbling thing I've ever felt. My first New Testament class that I tried to beg out of in seminary, I was like, I don't need this. I've been a pastor for a long time. I think I know the material. Robert Yarborough was the professor in that class, a really solid, still New Testament guy. He gave us a pretest, and it was brilliant. He came in and he's like, I know how many people in here have been pastors? We're all young, but we all raise our hands. He's like, right. I hear all the time, I know you guys know the New Testament like the back of your hands. You don't need this class probably. So I just like to give a pretest. It's not graded. I'm just trying to get a sense of how much of this we can just kind of skip over and just hang out, or how much of this we really need to dig into. I mean, I'm paraphrasing a lot here. It's been a long time. I don't remember exactly what he said. And I remember the room of maybe 60 people. We're all sitting there like, okay, just give me the thing. Let's buzz through this so we can just hang out and like be bros and stuff, because we're clearly peers. He gave us the test. Nobody passed it. Everybody, including me, failed the test. It's the worst, most humiliating thing I've ever been through. And I knew within 5 questions I'm in huge trouble here. I don't actually know any of this. I've been cheating using concordances. I have a week to prepare. I can mask all of my deficiencies. But there's one person in this room who actually knows the material, and he's the guy in front, and the rest of us probably need to just shut up. And me most of all. I mean, I bombed that test, and I thought I knew it. So, yeah, that's pretty
I've got to
humbling.
know. I've got to know the questions on that test. I know you're still finishing your thought here, but yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
mercy.
you're like, this is a long time ago, but I'm just curious, like, as a guy who's never been to seminary.
Oh, it's so long ago. What, I mean, okay, I remember one that I missed. He teased a couple of turns of phrases from things that Paul said in First and Second Thessalonians. And he was like, who is being described with, these phrases in the New Testament? And the correct answer was the man of lawlessness. I wasn't even close. Now I'd like to think I'd probably get that, but I had no guess whatsoever. It's Satan. I mean, I don't know. So it was things like that where what he was testing was our conversiveness with the material. And the questions were all kind of, like if I drop this phrase, you know what I'm talking about? And the answer was roundly, no. No, I have no idea what you're talking about. And people paid me with their tithe money for the last 4 years to teach them about this document I apparently know nothing about. That was sort of an existential crisis that night. I'm not sure I'm over the the psychological effects of that pretest even to this day. The point is, look, what's the counterbalance here? Don't let people look down on you because you're young, Timothy. Come on, some people are just going to despise people because of their youth, and that's stupid too. The idea is that there's a shrewdness and an innocence to what you do when you go out with the gospel. You're trying to read the room and do things that are going to make sense. You're trying to make good use of the investments and the opportunities that are being put in front of you. You're supposed to have this ability to read the weather and the signs of the times and be like, all right, I know what time it is. This is what needs to happen here. And I mean, the Bible assumes that you're probably going to miss on that sometimes. And that's where there's grace. And that's why the Holy Spirit's the one who does the heavy lift. But the expectation, even in the first commissioning that we see from Jesus, Matthew 10:16, the expectation is that you're going to be innocent, you're going to do kingdom value things, and you're not going to compromise on that, but also you're going to be shrewd. You're going to be attentive to what's going on. Neither of them will go perfectly, of course. That's why you get a Matthew 18 and an explanation of what to do when things do get crossways, or you're not shrewd, or you're not innocent, or whatever. But the idea is this is the ideal for what you're going for. And I want to clarify, I am not trying to say there are low character people in this conversation. They have low character. No, they're just new. They're just sizing it up. I want them in the conversation. I want everybody in the conversation. What I am saying is there is something deeply weird and unprecedented about how the conversation is curated by a non-human entity right now. Our conversation has been curated by, at the very worst, the marketplace, which at least has the touches of humanity to it throughout history. Now it's being curated by machine learning that even the people who run these algorithms don't understand. I know they don't. I've asked. They act like they do. They don't even know how their things work. There aren't like little dials on it that they can just quickly tune and be like, let's have less Jesus this week and let's have more of this other thing this week. It isn't that simple. It's very complex meta level machine learning, and that's shaping our conversation. To be shrewd in this moment means that we need to know what the patterns are there, and the basic pattern is things that involve outrage, anger, controversy, confrontation, things that are bombastic. We know that algorithms like that better right now, and they have for a very long time. So what does it look like to be shrewd about that stuff? Well, it just is going to require a little more effort from us to think about it. So again, to be clear, the primary target of my critique is not even the people. It's that the conversation is being guided by an algorithm that likes values that are entirely contrary to the values we're trying to espouse.
Man, I think that's very charitable. You're a charitable guy. I think to some extent, I really agree with you with the algorithm. There's no question there. I suppose that some of the angriest people I have come across on the interwebs have typically been a part of specific tribes. And I feel as though the digital presentation of, I'm going to say this very incendiary thing, though it is probably for the sake of, I think I'm speaking truth, right? Probably still motivated by that, has a good chunk of emphasis from, I'm going to get a pat on the back from my tribe, my attaboys. Like, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos. It seems something that's like deeply interwoven into our being, that we want to be people of our tribe rather than people of
Yep.
Christ. And it seems as if that there is a, um, it's what we did. Whether actually you're on the right or the left these days. At first, it was a very left-leaning kind of thing to do, to virtue signal, to like not do anything about a given problem, but talk about how
Yes.
outraged you are about this problem. It
Yes.
feels as if the right has zero problem doing the exact same thing today. And I'm not saying that I'm not weighing into it. I'm just saying that I think, hey, it's a cultural issue, but I'm seeing it now in the church in a way that, like, if I am outraged at this issue, my tribe will see my loyalty. They will see
Yes.
my faithfulness to the brand. I just, as much as I want to agree, we are being shaped by forces we can't see, touch, taste, sense in the algorithm space. You could call that a spiritual space too if you wanted to. But we're being shaped by those things. But there also seems to be a kind of tribalism that keeps us in an echo chamber. I'm not going to read anything from John Mark Comer because I disagree with him on the Atonement. Like, I do disagree with him on the Atonement, but like, I also did his Practicing the Way, and I thought it was fantastic, you know? So like, I think that there are, I disagree with N.T. Wright on various issues, but I think his books are great. Carmen Imes
I
is one of my
disagree
favorite
with me
biblical
from a
scholars.
month ago. I like Carmen Imes too.
Solid point.
I asked her
Carmen
to endorse
Imes,
my book. I endorsed one
good.
of hers, and we don't
She's
see everything the same way.
fantastic. When I go to ETS, if she is on the schedule, I just automatically go to her lectures because they are the most
Yes,
interesting lectures.
she's brilliant.
The best. But all that to say that, like, when I find Christ in talking to the body of Christ, and I think that
Yes.
people are robbing themselves, I think, of like deep, rich thoughtfulness and encounter with the Lord when they're kind of betraying their own walk with Christ by just appealing to their tribe and robbing themselves of
Yes.
all of this like great wonder. That's not a question. It's so I don't know where I'm
No, it's a
going with
bounce
that.
back. We're playing
Yeah,
tennis, buddy.
please,
We're just hitting the
please.
ball back and
Yeah.
forth. And it's, yes, you hit that ball to me. That's a big fat juicy ball. I'd like to hit it right back to you. The thing that I see happening in so many ways is that before we even get into a theological conversation about why this happens, why this phenomenon you're describing happens, you just get into basic human psychology and our insecurities. We were talking a minute ago about how the combination of being very new to an idea and finding it to be nourishing, it feels true. It feels like it scratches the itch of what's been wrong, but coupling that newness and it feels great to not really totally knowing it and not being aware of the larger conversation around it, what that'll do is it creates a sense of threat, because if your thing turns out to be wrong, then you lose this thing that feels good. So you kind of need it to be right in those early phases. And things that aren't saying the same thing as what you just found are kind of a threat. You can get there a couple of different ways. One is the sunk cost way, where you and your family for generations have done it a certain way, and your theology is such that if you ever questioned any of that, maybe grandma's not in heaven. And so you just can't, and you become really threatened and insular because of sunk cost. But you can also get there really easily because of basic human psychology and insecurity when you're brand new to a tradition, because for the first time things feel right. Then I found this new band and the new band is great and I want everybody to know about the new band. And anybody who says that the new band I found that I love is bad is a jerk. That's not even a religious thing. We see that happen even in how we like music. So before we even touch the theology, we just have to admit, like, we're weak, we're frail, we're human, we're in need of redemption, and we're suckers for certain things, and we're good at dishonest thoughts creeping into our otherwise honest thoughts. God bless everybody. We're all going to struggle with that at different times in different ways. However, there is a theological component to it as well, and that is that when we go into the echo chambers and we start to imagine that it's my way or the highway, there's only one right thing. When I see just the brutal, incendiary commentary from certain pockets on the internet about other pockets of historic creedal Christian faith, I'm appalled. Sometimes I'll even fire off a message and be like, dude, what are you doing? Take that tweet down, for crying out loud. You're just nuking everybody. Just, you're sitting on the toilet and you just banged out this tweet real quick. You didn't even think about it. Stop. Like, this isn't helpful. The reason that's so frustrating to me is because clearly the plot arc of the entire Bible is that this thing was always going to be for everybody. Clearly, even within the Bible, as the message goes out, people from different cultures receive it differently, and there is friction there. Even in Acts chapter 15, the church fathers, the first round of Christians, disciples of Jesus, they have to reconcile this. They have to reconcile that this isn't, these people are different. They're from a different background. They have different sensibilities. So guys, we got to get together. We got to boil it down. What are we going to tell these Gentiles they need to do? Then James and Peter and Paul, Barnabas, they come up with a surprisingly short list of not quite things that rise to the level of a biblical command, but just, this would be best. This seemed best to the Holy Spirit and to us, but that's Gentile country. Things are going to look a little different there. The heart of the gospel is what's important. It's also what the book of Galatians is about. So as the message goes out, like, this beautiful thing about Christianity, one of the best things about Christianity and the gospel is that it works everywhere. It works against the backdrop of every culture. It works in every language. It works in every socioeconomic situation. It's the most translatable, true thing that is ever trued. And when we go on the internet, manipulated by the algorithm and contorted by our own insecurities, and we uphold only one thing that God has done through the gospel encountering a certain people group as the right thing, and we try to nuke everything else, I think we are working contrary to the entire plot of God's redemptive plan. If it's within the boundaries of historic creedal biblical Christianity, we got to try to be a little more charitable to other people, or in the very act of trying to prop up our thing at the expense of all the other Christian things, we're sort of undermining one of the central, beautiful tenets of the whole deal and the whole arc, where in the end, all the kings from all the nations come with their crowns and they bow before the throne, and every knee bows and every tongue confesses and every tribe, tongue, and nation shows up. The gospel is built to bring everybody. We got to give a little more benefit of the doubt to people who encountered the gospel from a little different context than us. And I think the echo chamber that you and I are talking about right now that we see on the internet is missing that. That was a long time for me to hit the tennis ball back to you, but I have now hit the tennis ball back to you.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm curious because I mean I would imagine an echo chamber 200 years ago looked very different than our echo chambers today. In that
What do you picture?
I have access. I mean I spend $10 a month for a website called Everand, and I can read just a disgusting amount of commentaries. Like I have access to so much for so very little. If you got ChatGPT, you can do a deep research dive and say, hey, point me to the source material of church fathers who taught these things, and I can go read them. I can go read the source material for myself for basically free in almost all situations.
Yeah.
So I have access, and like I I wonder, uh, there's that phrase that like ignorance is bliss, you know, if I go to a small, most churches in America today are like 60 members. Again, go back 200 years, you don't have mega churches everywhere on every corner. So you think that often your little slice of Christianity is Christianity, but then you get dumped into this world where media is everywhere and there's all of these opinions about the scriptures. Like I wonder if we're as a guy who literally just consumes information from the vast corners of Christendom, like I wonder if we're even purposed for it. Like uh
Well said. Yeah.
I don't know. Like
Yep.
I don't know what to do with that.
Are we even purposed for it? And that to me is the question of the last 25 years. I mean, everybody was mad at the old people who tried to teach us Jesus in youth group in the 1990s. We need
With
to
the flannel
stop being
graph.
mad. Yeah, for crying
I
out
love
loud,
the
they
flannel
tried.
graph.
And nobody but David Bowie accurately predicted what the internet was going to do. And I don't know how that guy got it right, but have you seen that one interview that David Bowie did where he just anticipates social media and the fracturing we're talking about right now? It's incredible. Literally, the musician, David Bowie. Everybody else had no idea what this thing was going to be. Even the people who were making it didn't know what it was going to be. If the architects of the internet didn't know what the internet was going to be, how can we expect the elderly couple who tried to help us in Sunday school in the 1990s when we were kids, how can we expect that they would have known what it would do? Of course they didn't. They just tried to teach us Jesus and the Bible and what it looks like to walk with him and follow Christ. And I think we kind of mentally owe them all a little bit of an apology. Those of us who were raised with it and then got mad about it, we could not have done better. We, as we're currently constructed, would do far worse than they did. So we got this thing that was faithfully handed down to us that did not anticipate the shockwave that just went through all of culture. Of course it didn't. No one anticipated it. But from basically the advent of MySpace until maybe just a couple of years ago, these shockwaves have resonated. This is the single biggest rewiring of the human brain in the history of the species since creation. Nothing has ever happened that changed us more, especially when you consider the amount of time it happened in. We've never been in a room with everyone else on Earth, and not just on one platform. You don't like the conversation on one, just go join another one. The sheer glut, the embarrassment of opportunities to connect with other people and know all things and hear all news stories and have opinions about those news stories within minutes of the news stories coming out. No, I don't think we were meant for that. I don't think we were meant for this many friendships and relationships. And so we're having to find all new ways to contend with this. And so in that regard, I don't want to get too bent out of shape, because of course it's going to clunk. Of course, we're not going to know how to be Christians in a larger global Christian conversation in the age of Twitter. We just thought of the age of Twitter, and we haven't even had long enough to have a big enough sample size to know what's stupid and what isn't, and what will last and what will look dated. We're still figuring all of those things out. But even as we're still figuring it out, I still reserve the right to be a little bit grumpy with where we're at in the process. And I guess that's where I'm at right now.
Well, what do you think net benefit, or like, because if I gauge, if a really small sample size and I gauge myself, I'm like, man, I've grown as an individual tremendously because of all of this
Yeah.
opportunity. But then like when I broaden that sample size, it's like, man, so many people I think are intimidated, afraid,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
at times rightfully so. Like I just want to, like, some of these issues are hard. Penal substitution, big fan, huge fan. Uh, I have seen a trend of certain denominational movements going from let's get rid of penal substitution to there's no hell, there's no judgment. And
Why are they
I
doing that,
know
in your opinion?
it seems as if punishment for sin is connected in both of those things. So it's not to say that if you disregard penal substitution, you're automatically going to get there. But it seems as if there is a cultural press to say punishment for sin doesn't seem fair, doesn't seem kind, doesn't seem just. This is Josh's pea-sized brain trying to make sense of all this. I'm not saying this is what's happening, but this is what I'm
It's a
perceiving.
great take. I
And
think the same
and they
thing.
go, yeah, I get rid of the penal substitution, and because that means that Jesus isn't punishing me for my sin. He's just showing me an example of what love and mercy looks like. And when I'm
Which
able
can
to get
be
that,
also true.
which which is also true, right? I have a very mosaic view of the atonement. Big fan, huge, right? Like, good on you for believing in Christus Victor, right? And all the other various forms. I think they're great. So when I looked at that, I go, yeah, that's good. But the getting rid of that seems to really be connected oftentimes to bowing to culture. So is it important to get involved in the debate? Yes, I think so. I think it's important to say, I really disagree. I think penal substitution is a big deal. This is why I think it's a big deal. I'm not going to say you're unchristian. I'm not going to claim, a guy like John Mark Comer, who doesn't care for that view, is suddenly going to get rid of eternal judgment in any kind of sense. I'm not making any kind of predictions. And um, yet I think that when we get on these really broad spaces and we see some things that seem like warning signs, we get really bent out of shape. And I don't know what the right metric is at times, at what level of outrage is necessary for some of these things, because we've seen large denominations go apostate pretty quickly. And
Hmm.
I think that we should at least see that those boundary markers are there for our benefit, um, raise awareness for those things, while simultaneously not demonizing our brother on the other side of the aisle, because he can be wrong about something and still be a brother. And it's hard at a distance to know if someone's a sheep or a goat, because far enough away they look about the same. So I guess my question in all of that is, again, sample size. Do you think it's ultimately good? Do you think it's ultimately to our detriment? Do you think that everyone having access to all of this information exposes them to really bad ideas because they don't have fundamental truths and foundations over here? Having read a bunch of church history and a bunch of stuff on the atonement, I go, man, I think this is a pretty core pillar we don't need to move. And then there's someone jumping on YouTube for the first time, hearing, from Brian Zahnd that God's not a moral monster. He would never beat up his kid because that's cosmic child abuse. And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't have all this
Mercy.
other foundation. That's going to sound really compelling. It's not, though. It's not compelling. We've thought about this.
Yeah.
We've really wrestled through this before. So it's hard for
Really
me to
wrestled
tell.
through it. Yes, like with
Yes.
a Bible. Yes, like
Yeah.
it's wrestled through in the affirmed Holy Scriptures. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So
Hmm.
I'm over here going, in some sense, I see it a good that there's all these ideas out there. But then I also am like, man, this is kind of scary because people are just jumping online and hearing a really compelling argument. And
Yeah.
for them, it's just me and my Bible, and I figured it out. And I go, yikes.
Well, I wish it was more me and my Bible. Um, I think it's a lot more me and an analogy I heard that I'm going to run with. That's one thing I've encountered in a lot of my church visits, and I'm not there to pick a fight. I'll ask a clarifying questions, but I don't generally engage in debate mode when I'm being welcomed as a guest into somebody's church. But one of the things I notice is that certain groups who I really disagree with on the atonement, and like I disagree with them on the atonement because they neglect the one expression of the atonement, that being penal substitutionary atonement, that is glaringly present in Scripture. I disagree with them on that point significantly. But what I'll notice is it's just analogies they go with. They're not Bible analogies, they're not parables. It's just, well, picture this. It's like this. When you go to the market, you don't buy from this shelf, you buy from that shelf. I'm just making one up. And it's like, there, see? Now that's how God is. And it sounds nice, but then I think for a minute and I go, how is that in any way binding? I could just make up another analogy in another department of the grocery store that would make just as much sense and totally contradicts what you just said. But I think, again, because of those factors that we've talked about for a lot of who's involved in the conversation on the internet, those kind of quaint analogies really carry the day when you kind of just thinking it through. And a lot of times those quaint analogies square more neatly with what is fashionable or whatever the sensibilities du jour are in this 3-month window of the internet or that 3-month window in the history of the internet, or in light of this latest thing that everyone now needs to have strongly informed, lightly informed, strongly held opinions about. So I have seen, and this is the first time I think I've really articulated this. I appreciate you bringing it up. I have seen an over dependence on very flimsy extra biblical analogies for foundational theological things, where you don't really lead with the analogy, you lead with the overt teachings of the text and historical Christianity, not some framing of it, it's like this. But those it's like thises seem to really carry the day. And I see that even in my own comment sections when I go and talk with someone and they break out a flimsy analogy. I see a ton of people saying that. Oh, that's so beautiful. Now I get it. And I'm going, okay, well, do I need to go and engage here? And sometimes I'll just reply with like a big swath of Bible and be like, yeah, no, that's his opinion. Here's a text that speaks to the same thing from the Bible. Maybe consider this as well. But that is definitely a phenomenon. And I think that the allure of such weak analogies as a central pillar that's formative in somebody's internet theological thinking, I think those are going to gradually fragment, and people who've really built on those things are going to have to revisit historic Christianity. They're going to have to revisit the Bible to replace that weak foundational pillar with something else when they get a little bit further into it. And that's okay. I mean, didn't we all have to do that? Aren't I still doing that? There are things that we think that make more sense and are more biblical, and there are things that we think that we just haven't revisited for a really long time. So I get it, but that does seem to be one of the phenomena that I'm seeing quite a bit, is what you just described.
Yeah, I had a buddy who helped me a lot on Remnant Radio as we were getting off the ground. His name was Dawson, and he had a background in ethics, and his dad was a pastor for a long time, and he'd gone to seminary. When I say he's got a background in ethics, I mean his degree was in ethics, and he was a very committed Calvinistic brother, and I'm still not Calvinistic, but there was a time where I was listening to a guy and talking about free will and human will and those kinds of things. And he was just like, hey, before you go too deep, and you mentioned illustrations, one of those guys I was listening to for a while was really big on illustrations. And he goes, hey, I just want you to read up a little bit on Augustine and Pelagius. Okay. Just get some foundational stuff in before you go hook, line, and sinker with all of the illustrations here. And he didn't say it that blatantly, but it was clear that was his motive. And I think defining historic term of will, desire, those kinds of things, like what the human heart wants, can frame all of those pieces. So still not a Calvinist today because of that reading. However, it did give me some boundaries as far as what I think the human heart is capable of apart from the work of grace, apart from a work of God in our midst, which I think both Calvinists and Arminians would agree with. But there are some of those foundational things. I think had I not gone through some of that reading, a entirely libertarian free will would be a position that I would hold. And some people use that phrase in a way that would be orthodox, but others use it in a way that I think would maybe be concerning. So anyway, I've found personally, again, that there is a lot of good benefit to the internet, a lot of good benefit to being able to access all this information. I would just encourage believers who are new at this, go old, like look for old stuff. You encourage people to, as they were kind of in the cage stage, read a lot. I would just really encourage them, read some old stuff. Like, it's not like you have to read all of the early church fathers per se, but like, read some stuff that's been around for a while, because there is a clear biblical warning about just raising up teachers that tickle your ears, and you're likely going to find a groups of people that really are speaking your language. But if
and
this
no
is
one
not,
thinks they are that, to be clear.
that's right.
If we went by self-identification, 0 such teachers have ever existed.
Yes.
So
Yes.
whoever's doing it doesn't know they're doing it.
Yeah, and myself included. There might be 3 subjects that I could go, I think I could speak to a good swath of what I think historic Christian faith has said about this given theological subject. And on a lot of these other issues, I'm like, I'm holding this with a very open hand, like the Trinity, right? Like when you get into theology, you really want to know the Trinity. It's basically the foundation of everything. And, you know, when we got into a conversation with another buddy of mine about eternal subordination of the Son, I'm like, I think this is really not good, you know, there's been a whole lot of work done on this subject. Let's talk about it. I think that making sure that you have a historic lens on things that you're going to be dogmatic about, I think is really important. So for any believer, whether it's Calvinism, whether it's the millennium, whether it's the tribulation or the rapture, whatever, pet doctrine you're really passionate about, really heated about, I would just really encourage, read deeply early church sources on some of those things. And I think it will bring a level of humility to the conversation that will maybe safeguard us from new winds of doctrine in some of that sense. Matt,
I would add to that, if you don't mind.
No, I was
that was the wrap up tone. I recognize that.
Yeah.
Okay. Quickly, let me just piggyback.
We have 10
minutes. The other thing that I would add to your list.
Don't feel rushed. We have 10 minutes. You're good.
The other thing I would add to that is just read giant swaths of Bible. It's just sitting there for the taking. It's right there. The source material, the authoritative material, is easily accessed. Grab the audio version. The David Suchet NIV is gold. He put the effort into understanding what he was reading well enough to enunciate and emphasize and read it like a person who wrote it. I appreciate that. A lot of times people just go authority voice and cold read it. I feel like David Suchet really got it. I mean, you can get it on Audible. And there are probably other great audio Bibles as well, but you can put that stuff on in the background of your daily life and internalize huge chunks of Bible. You can do the whole Bible multiple times every year in audio form, which is how everybody heard the Bible for the longest time within the history of the family of faith. You can read it with your face, just with your eyeballs. The classic Bible, you can read it multiple times a year. It isn't that hard to chew through, especially if you give yourself permission, like you were just saying, not to know everything and not to read the whole thing with the antenna out for how do I defeat people on the internet about these arguments. Just read it. Internalize. You won't need, I mean, the connections will just happen. Things will click. Turns of phrases will happen. I mean, for crying out loud, I'm a Christian. I believe the Holy Spirit opens the eyes of the people who read it. I believe that it doesn't return void. The number one thing that I could possibly recommend for wanting to get past all of this and get above the noise is as close to infinite Bible as you can possibly put into your brain. You can't get enough. And then beyond that, you were talking about the passionate hot button issues that, everybody's got their handful of things that they feel really strongly about. That's great. I get that. I suppose maybe I do too as well. But I think another really strong recommendation that I would have for people who feel maybe a little bit awash in all of this or feel really eager to fight on the internet about these things is to differentiate between the craft of theology and hot takes. They're not the same thing.
That's good.
We learned hot takes from political radio, Rush Limbaugh. We learned hot takes from sports radio. The Denver Broncos are 1-2, and they have had the lead for every second of the fourth quarter and have lost as time expires in 2 consecutive games. Bo Nix and Sean Payton are hot trash and must be fired immediately. I'm not doing analysis there. I picked a fact, which was true, and then I just blurted out some crap because people will respond to it, and I'll keep the eyeballs or earballs on me because I blurted something out. That isn't how theology is done, but that's where we get all of our cues about discourse and about how to do this kind of media. The truth is, these aren't opinions. They're interpretations. They're earned reads. Theology isn't a mindset, it's an achievement, it's work, it's a practice, it's a thing that you do. And the people who do it well, look at them. They tend not to be hyper combative. There are exceptions, but overwhelmingly, there's sort of this slow paced, reasoned, humble, I am one voice in the middle of a much larger conversation, and I'm not going to have anything too great to contribute until I really understand the larger conversation. What that means is the bigger the conversation gets, the more years Christianity exists, the longer it goes by. It might mean the further into our lifetimes it is before we really have a ton to contribute to this. That's okay. I'm not sure I have a ton to contribute yet, even though I've dedicated my whole life to learning about this material day in and day out. There's just a lot to get, and that's exciting. But in the process of getting all of that, I keep encountering God. I keep encountering the Holy Spirit. I keep encountering the Word. I keep seeing what God is doing in the lives of other people, both living and dead. And so it's not like you're just wasting time if you're not out there spouting hot takes on the internet. You're being a Christian. You're growing. You're doing something. I think, to use an illustration after talking about the danger of illustrations, it's like the Mr. Miyagi approach to training up Daniel. Daniel wanted to go, karate kick people in the face. I guess he got to it eventually. But first, just wax this car and focus on this one thing. You're learning. You're too new at this to even understand what you're learning. But you're learning. Be around the thing. Gain the thing. And I think there's some ancient wisdom to that teaching approach, in that the theologians, the people engaged in this conversation who have done the most, it seems like they're just saturated in learning from God and from the Bible and from the church and from other Christians, so much that eventually thoughtful, humble, biblically informed theology that benefits other people, that serves other people, can't help but kind of ooze out. And I really like that as a pathway toward doing this kind of work, but I really don't like the sports talk radio hot take approach for doing this kind of work. I think it's destructive and undercuts the whole proposition.
That's really good, Matt. I want to give you a second to it because I love the tiered system. I want to learn from God. I want to learn from the Bible. I want to learn from the church, other Christians. And I think that's the appropriate tier set, right? Because we don't just certainly we know God through the scriptures, right? Certainly, but we don't want to search out the scriptures thinking that in them is eternal life, right? God, scripture, church, and I would say history in that regard, and other Christians. I've referenced a couple of times the use of church history, the use of reading broadly, not as a replacement to scripture, because I think you picked up on that really well, to say you've got an infinite amount of time to read the Bible and you will glean and learn from that. I would just, in the midst of talking about theology more broadly, just encourage people that, like, you in the Bible, though it's very, very good, it's just me and my Bible, and I made a reference to this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Binitarianism came out of someone with the Bible, right? Like Arianism came out of some guy with the Bible, right? Like
The
every
worst
heresy
rebellion and violence
yeah,
in the history of China came out with one dude locked in a room with his Bible.
that's right. So in saying I'm learning from God, I'm learning from the Bible. When we say learning from the church, all that I would say in context of what we've been discussing so far is that the historic church has set up some guardrails, because God has always been speaking by the work of his Spirit through the church. And part of humility says, if the whole church has been saying this for 2,000 years, I'm not going to be the genius who's figured out that the whole church was wrong. Now, there are very few subjects that the whole church is in agreement on, but you should know what those landmarks are so that you don't go spinning off into committing mass genocide, as you
Uh,
suggested.
yeah.
Because hey, you're just one Bible verse away. Everyone is.
Well, and you get really excited about. I mean, we have
Sure.
that phenomenon called pareidolia, right? The thing where we, as humans, somehow manage to see human faces in everything. I think pareidolia is the name of the effect. And man, I can think of times in my own life where I've kind of got on the scent of something, and I'm like, oh, there's a connection here. I'm doing research on this little window of Pamphylia and southern Galatia right now, trying to figure out whether the book of Galatians worked. Like, did Christianity work there? I mean, obviously it worked in that it's in the Bible and that it's good and that the church accepted it, but did the original recipients accept it? So I got to look at a bunch of different little towns, some in North Galatia, some in South Galatia, and just see what happened there. And along the way, I keep coming across this name, this Greek name, Polemon. And I'm like, oh, there's something to that, because Colossae is on the border of this area. That's where Philemon is from. I'm going to find a connection here. I wasted the better part of a whole workday running down this connection I was sure was there in Strabo and Cassius Dio and some other ancient sources and in the Bible. And I'm going to make this connection between Philemon and Polemon. There's no connection whatsoever. But the pareidolia instinct kicked in, and I really thought I'd found something novel. Well, guess what, my friend? I want to find something novel. I love the church. I love church history. Of course I want to find new things. Some of it's out of pride, but some of it's out of the childhood impulse to discover, because things are awesome.
Which is
and who doesn't want to jam a shovel in the ground and hear a clink and pull out some amazing artifact, Indiana Jones style? I want to find stuff nobody else has noticed. In this case, it wouldn't have changed anything about theology at all. It just would have been a fun little nugget. But I have to admit that I'm sometimes so eager to discover that I might see connections where there are not. And then the facts sometimes humble me and have to temper my eagerness.
But that's how we read well.
Everyone
should do that. Everyone should chase those little instincts, looking for it. I really do. Just verify it. Verify if it's true or not. And if it's not, it's like, hey, that's a whim. But like, when you read a good novel, he put the shotgun up and, hid the shells over here, and you're like, oh, that's going to be important for later. Like, that's how we read those things. Yeah. But like, then we read, and then he cursed the walls of Jericho, and anyone who rebuilds it, his son's going to die. And we're like, that's dumb. And we just keep reading, not expecting later on in the book, someone's going to build this city and his son's going to die. And we're, like, we don't make those connections. And I think, just here, an example to your point about the John the Baptist, I'm not worthy to untie his sandals, that bit. And, I had read that 1,000 times and stumbled over a commentary where one of my church father guys, I think it was Gregory, was like, hey, this is a reference to Ruth and Boaz and the kinsman redeemer. And when Boaz goes to redeem Ruth, he takes the sandal off of the kinsman redeemer. So he is saying, I'm unworthy to be the bridegroom. And I'm like, is this a thing? Is John the Baptist saying I'm not worthy to be the bridegroom when he's not willing to take off Jesus' sandals? And apparently 3 or 4 church fathers were pretty convinced it was about that. So I'm like, this is an interesting. And then I started going through some like Messianic Jewish literature, finding a whole bunch of references to this. And I go, I think this might be a thing. Or is John the Baptist in a scene? Or like, those kinds of things are exciting. And I think people should exhaust that, because they can find some really cool nuggets, I think, in the scripture that don't really change any vast difference to the story meaning, but are really exciting to kind of stumble upon. So
and to get outside the infinite
the
simulacra loop of commentaries.
Yes.
The commentaries, they just copy each other. I mean, some people work harder than others, but a lot of commentaries aren't great. It's just somebody wrote a good sermon series from other commentaries, and they don't even remember where they got the things. Other commentaries are spectacular works of original research situated in a larger 2,000-year conversation about that particular book of the Bible. It can be hard to tell the difference on the front end, or hard to tell the difference when you're new at it. But one thing you can do to get around all of that is just what you said. Just do it. Track down your dumb Polemon Philemon impulse. And much like, Edison said when asked about his discouragement, like, oh, you're wasting all this time. No, I've discovered 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Well, okay, like everything I discover that isn't a connection is still a discovery. I still ran down a thing. I still did the work. I still immersed myself in better minds than my own. I still made the conversation happen outside of myself. And every time I'm right about a thread like that I pull on, it's incredibly humbling when you get to the end, because you realize the only reason I could pull on this thread was because of a jillion things other people have done from all over the world in all these different languages. I'm so lucky to have them. When you pull on a thread and it doesn't work, that's incredibly humbling because you're like, dang, I was sure. I was ready to trot out onto the internet with that. And I was wrong. There was nothing. Oh, what else have I trotted out onto the internet with? Uh-oh. So either way, it's a win. And I appreciate the way you put that, because without your comment, your follow-up comment, one could have heard what I said as being, don't be curious about the Bible. You'll only end up wasting your time. And I think the exact opposite.
No, I heard exactly what you were saying. Love that. Well, it's that time. We got to wrap up because we would be talking here absolutely forever. Matt, you just released a book. Tell me about your book for people who want to be, who are interested in doing deep dives into the scripture.
Yep, it's called The Lightning Fast Field Guide to the Bible. It's Zondervan, HarperCollins. They've been really fun to work with. It's not out yet. It's available for pre-order. What's the full title? It's complicated. It's The Lightning Fast Field Guide to the Bible, your compact companion to the best book ever. It's fun, it's deep divey, it's quick, and it is meant to be, one, the kind of thing that you could give away to somebody else who's intimidated by the Bible and they don't know where to start. This book is meant to be an antidote for some of the things that we've raised questions about in this conversation. It's also meant to be a great cheat code for people who've been around the Bible a lot, but it's a very big book. And from time to time, you need an answer to a big picture thing about a book or one little angle about a given book. And I tried to anticipate every single thing. You might be like, what was that detail about Philippians? It's meant to be there in a very quick, punchy, fun, understandable way. So it's really meant to cover the whole gamut of people who might be interested in the Bible. And I'm really proud of it. And I hope people love it. And thanks for letting me mention it.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, check it out. We'll put a link of it in the description of this video. And for the rest of you who are out there, make sure to subscribe, share the video around, and subscribe to the newsletter if you want to be updated all things Remnant Radio. Thanks for coming on, Matt, and we'll see the rest of you guys next time.